lot of us over the last 2 years have been feeling anxious, a little bit scared. We're feeling overwhelmed. We're feeling helpless. We're feeling a little disconnected from others. And it's been very difficult during the pandemic. And I've decided to create a couple of videos to help us understand what we're all going through. The operative term for this is trauma. My name's Edward Mooney Jr. And 12 years ago, I started studying trauma because I decided to look into the effects of school shootings on teachers and others and how it affects the rest of their lives. Little did I know that that background in trauma research would be very helpful the last 2 years. I'd like to talk to you during this video about what is trauma? How do we understand it? And how do we know we're going through it? In the next video, I'm going to talk about some ideas that will allow us to move forward as this pandemic, we hope, recedes into the past. Let's talk right now about trauma. First of all, I have a website, edwardmooney.net/primer or primer, depending on how you say that. You'll see a link in the screen and also afterwards. But let's talk about what trauma does to us. It affects your sense of self. Now, there's a psychiatrist by the name of Suzanne Dillman who wrote something that I've been using for a long time now to help me understand trauma. And I'd like to read that to you. Traumatic experiences damage your sense of self by shattering the beliefs, morals, philosophies, and ethics that gave your life meaning. The beliefs that once made sense no longer fit with the real world experiences you went through. And I wonder if a lot of us aren't feeling that way right now. I know I've struggled with it. And if you've had such things as difficulty sleeping, strange dreams full of anxiety and confusion, like I have, we're all going through this together. And in fact, as you'll see in the second video, that idea of we're all going through this together is a clue to help us get through this. So sit back a little bit. And again, if you want to look at edwardmooney.net/primer, there are a lot of these things are there, and you're going to see those slides in the next few minutes. So let's talk about what trauma is. Let's begin by defining trauma. An eminent psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk tells us that trauma is specifically an event that overwhelms the central nervous system, altering the way we process and recall memories. What that means is we've been going through our normal life up till 2020, and then all of a sudden COVID, the economic issues, the social division, numerous issues kind of overwhelmed our system. And we found it more difficult to concentrate and to focus on what we were doing before. Many of us are still working through this, but it's a little more difficult from day to day. And I think we really need to understand that it's something that overwhelms the central nervous system. And what that means is our brain is unable to process memories, unable to make sense of things as easily. So we become a little more anxious, a little more confused, and things get to be a little bit more difficult. What does trauma affect? Well, trauma is specifically an event that overwhelms the central nervous system, as I said. And if you look at that diagram down here, you'll see that in the middle of the brain, there's something that neurologists call, nicknamed the lizard brain, otherwise known as the amygdala. That is the lowest part of your brain, and it's sort of that flight or fight type of thing. It senses danger. And right now, that part of our brain is being highly activated, where our alerts are up, looking for signs of danger. And by the way, as Dr. van der Kolk points out, we can't process and recall memories as well. So if you're feeling a little bit confused, this could be an explanation for it. This is, by the way, called the limbic system. Moving on. Trauma will affect attachment. Let's listen to this quote. Uncontrollable disruptions of attachment bonds are central in the trauma response and cause psychological and biologic disturbances, including physical addiction to abusers, hyperarousal states that are alleviated by violence against self or others, and neophobia. That's a fancy word for saying I'm afraid of something new. Secure attachments and conscious awareness relieve compulsive repetition. Notice that attachment is very critical here. Feeling safe with someone, feeling like they are sharing this with you is very critical. Let's move on to the next slide. A sense of self. As I quoted Dr. Dillman at the beginning, we're finding that our beliefs are being challenged. Our religious beliefs, our beliefs in our country, our beliefs in our relationships. We come to question everything. Trauma does that. It's normal for you to feel that way. And by the way, I've noticed that many of us who have strong religious beliefs, we start saying there's something wrong with me that I'm questioning these things. No, this is a neurological response to trauma. It's normal. Take a deep breath. Now, remember, some of the behaviors we learn during trauma are effective during the trauma, but later on become very destructive to us. So we've got to start working on what behaviors are healthy and which ones should we not take into the future. But that's for a future discussion. This time, I'm just trying to make you aware that we are struggling with something really deep, really down low, something that's challenging our sense of how we view ourselves. Am I a worthwhile person? What's the value of my life? It gets very difficult. Let's move on to slide number 5. Again, as I mentioned, there are spiritual implications here. This mismatch can manifest itself as questioning your spiritual or religious beliefs, which can result in the decision that your beliefs are no longer accurate, or it may result in a deeper or new sense of spirituality. Wow, this is really, really difficult. As for me, I have what I call liberal Christian beliefs. I know that may be a weird name, but I base my beliefs on the sense that God is love. And I believe strongly that clinging to this idea of love keeps me centered through all of this. So those of us who are spiritual, I urge you to start looking for the deepest sense of what your spirituality is. It says here you can find a new sense of spirituality. And that is kind of what I urge people to go towards. Use this trauma, this challenge, to look deeper in yourself, look down deep and really clarify your values. What is important to you? Is it any more important now that somebody wears a collared shirt to church or not? Or is it more important that I'm caring and accepting of others? Dig down deep. Let's move on to slide number 6. Let's talk about trauma symptoms a little bit. Again, I'm going to keep saying this. Your responses are normal reactions to abnormal events. And you're going to feel things such as helpless, overwhelmed, exhausted, alert, anxious. There are other words in there, but I think you are feeling some of these. Most human beings are. Let's look at the symptoms of what trauma does to us. First, shock, denial, disbelief, confusion, difficulty concentrating. Have you found that? I've struggled with that quite a bit. Anger, because you're unsettled. Irritability, which goes along with the anger. Mood swings, you feel better, then you crash for a while. Anxiety and fear. Guilt, shame, self-blame. Stop doing that. Withdrawing from others, feeling sad or hopeless, feeling disconnected or numb. Let's look at the physical symptoms. Insomnia or nightmares, fatigue, being startled easily, difficulty concentrating. It could become a physical thing. You see yourself wandering off, looking at other things. Racing heartbeat. Have you been clenching your jaw a lot? Edginess, agitation, aches and pains, muscle tension. Maybe you're feeling your shoulder is a little bit tense. Again, these are normal responses to abnormal events. The best way to cope with trauma, the first step, is to realize you're going through it, number one. And number two is to start seeing how you're experiencing these things. We tend to want to be in denial. We in the Western world tend to think of ourselves as being strong individuals, and we can do this alone. That could actually be a weakness when we're trying to struggle with trauma. So at this point, before you go on to the second video, I'm going to ask you to look over these symptoms, emotional, psychological, and physical symptoms, and be truthful to yourself. Are you having these things? Are you feeling these things, either physically or emotionally? And once you maybe make a list of how you think this is affecting you, and all, with using some of these words here. And when you're done with that, then go on to the next video, which will start in slide number 7 on how we can cope with this. Once again, I'm Edward Mooney Jr. I'm a professor of educational psychology and someone who's been studying trauma for 12 years. I invite you to walk with me so that we might heal together from this trauma called the COVID pandemic. I hope you'll watch the next video.